Hello everyone, we're about to get started. My name is Beth. I'm one of the talent development instructors here. Along with me is Tina.
Hello.
She's also a talent development instructor. So we're going to be going through introduction to interviewing.
So first we're going to go over researching and preparing for an interview. Next we'll talk about answering common interview questions and go over some examples. And then lastly we'll talk about the steps you need to take after the interview. So as you go through the presentation today, I want you to just personally think about what are some things you want to learn during this presentation, thinking about the best or most worst job interview you've ever had, and lastly, thinking of those things that you struggle with that hopefully this presentation will be able to help you overcome.
So as we just mentioned, there are 3 parts to an interview. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about how to prepare. So in this workshop, we're going to talk a lot about marketing your skills. So we just want you to be creative and thoughtful in the answers that you give to certain interview questions.
If I were to ask you what your strengths are from your current or former jobs, would you be able to answer that confidently? If not, ownetonline.org is a pretty helpful website to let you look up the job or jobs you've had and note key skills you've used, technology, and so on. So be sure to utilize that website to get additional information.
So now after knowing your skills and strengths, it's important to research the company to show how your skills match with what they're looking for. So make sure you look online, visit the company's direct website to look at their mission statement, their vision, their list of values. Also look at their Facebook page or LinkedIn page, or even Google them to see what's been in the news lately about their company. Some companies might also be included in industry websites or magazines, so be sure to check those out as well. Researching the company is very important because you should know what the company does before you get to the interview. Tina is going to share an example of a time she didn't research the company and how that turned out for her.
So a long time ago, I had an interview at Chipotle when they first came to Grand Rapids. And the very first question they asked me was, so what do you know about our company? And I basically smiled and said, I know you make fresh food, but that's all I had to say. So again, we just stress the importance of you want to have more than what a general person off the street would know. Since you're job searching, you want to be sure you have an appropriate voicemail and email. I've even been guilty of having an inappropriate voicemail that caused me to be turned down for a job offer. And then you also want to be sure to keep a pen and paper around, or use your phone or a planner, whatever keeps you organized. Next, also be sure to respond quickly to all messages. Playing phone tag with an employer, again, can cost you an opportunity. And then lastly, you want to be sure to confirm interview details, the time, the place, what to bring, what type of interview it's going to be as well, just because that can help prepare you for a more successful interview.
Making a good first impression is important. Therefore, the way you look does influence that. So just making sure that you wear tasteful clothing, usually dressing one step above the job you're applying for. So for example, the job you're applying for, you'd wear jeans and a t-shirt. For the interview, you should wear a nice shirt and some khakis or dress pants, something like that. Just making sure your clothes are ironed and you practice good hygiene.
So we just want to stress the importance again of making sure you confirm the type of interview it's going to be. So we're now going to go through the different types of interviews, with one-on-ones being the most common. So we won't say too many details about that one. But with any type of interview where they can see you, want to really be aware of your body language and your handshake. And there's some other tips we'll go over as well. So a panel interview is the type of interview where there's more than one person interviewing you. So again, being prepared will help you walk into that type of interview more confidently.
So a group interview is an interview where there's more than one person interviewing for the same job. So there may be one or more people asking questions, but you're sitting there with your competition. So you want to make sure you're confident and assertive in answering, and also make sure you have plenty of examples to give in case someone takes your answer.
Another type of interview is a phone interview. This is where you may be called and asked a few qualifying questions just to make sure you're still qualified for the job, but then they will end up scheduling a certain day and time that they will call you or for you to call them. So with a phone interview, you just want to keep in mind the tone of your voice, the enthusiasm in your voice. It's what's going to stand out along with your answers to the questions that they're asking you, especially since they cannot physically see you. So you also want to be aware of making sure there's no distractions in the background as well when you have a phone interview. So the types of interview questions you may be asked may have to do with your abilities. Can you do the job? Your ethics. Will you do the job? And your interests. Will you fit in with the company culture and like the job that you're going to be doing? So the types of skills you may be asked about may have to do with your work content skills, which are your direct skills to the job. So if I had 5 years experience welding and I'm applying or interviewing to be a welder, that's my skill there. Transferable skills are more of those ones that transfer from job to job. So if you're maybe going from an assembly line to a server, those you're still able to work at a fast pace, handle pressure well, other examples. And then self-management skills are more of, are you positive, flexible, the behavioral style questions you could be asked and situations you could be asked about. So for common interview questions, generally for the in-person workshops, we have a handout for that. But what we would suggest is you can use Google, you can look on educational websites like GRCC that can help bring up common interview questions for, and then make sure to put in the job that you're interviewing for, and that should be able to bring up a good list for you.
So now we're going to go through the day of the interview and how to prepare.
So some things that you don't want to bring to your interview. I realize many people keep their cell phones on them, but you want to make sure you turn it off. Also, if you do carry a briefcase or a small purse, that's okay. Just make sure the color does not stand out and it's not like a huge something that stands out. Food or drink you don't want to bring either, but if you do have a little bottled water or something, that's okay. Also thinking about perfume or cologne, you want to be very careful with those. And just your overall appearance, you don't want anything to stand out.
So for introduction and greeting, just making sure that you greet everyone that you come into contact with, smiling, giving a firm handshake, and just an overall good first impression.
So during the interview, you want to make sure that you keep your answers to the questions positive and professional. There are certain questions such as what happened at your last job that can sometimes throw people off, so just being aware of that. And then you also want to try to match the interviewer's energy level. So if they're very bubbly and outgoing and you're more laid back, you want to just come out of your shell a little, and vice versa.
Now we're going to go through how to answer some difficult interview questions. So just being aware of, generally there's 2 steps to interview questions. First, you want to make sure you address the underlying concern that the employer is asking. And then the second is to give specific examples.
So here's the first sample question. Do you have reliable transportation? Basically, their concern is, will you show up for each shift? Most people may answer this question with a yes, and that would be it. However, if you're utilizing the step 1, step 2 process, you may state, yes, I have reliable primary and backup transportation, and I am very dependable and always on time for work.
So the next question is a very common one. It's, can you tell me about yourself? So the underlying concern is, how will your skills and experience transfer to this position? On the next slide, we'll give an example of how to do that. This is a good script to use to answer the question, can you tell me about yourself, because it addresses the underlying concern. It gives examples of your previous job duties, where you worked, and also your greatest strengths and how it relates to that company. This script can also be used at a job fair when approaching employers. It also can be used as an elevator pitch. And using onetonline.org can help you fill in the blanks so that you have a good script to use with employers.
Another sample question is, can you tell me about your last job? So if they ask you this question, in general, they want to just know how your former job duties relate to the job you're interviewing for. And if they don't directly relate, again, thinking about those transferable skills that you have. Using numbers and percentages when possible too will also help strengthen your answer.
So now, what is your greatest weakness? This is a question a lot of people have difficulty with because everyone does have a weakness. So how can you answer that? So we'll give you some suggestions. So we all have weaknesses, so how do you deal with them on the job? So some things to mention, things that you've either improved on or overcame, things that you've used as a strength that not everyone may consider a strength, things that are evident that you can downplay, such as things that you're either under or overqualified for, and things that sound bad but can turn into a positive. Just in general, whatever you pick as your weakness, just making sure it's not something that will be a red flag to an employer. For example, if you say your greatest weakness is that you're not a morning person, but you're applying for a job that starts at 5 a.m., that could be a red flag. So just making sure you pick something that's not directly related to the job.
So another question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So if an employer interviewer asks you this, they really do want to know if you're going to stick around. And if so, hopefully you don't have a hard time answering this question. However, if you only see yourself there until the next best thing comes along, you don't want to be very blunt about it, but you do want to let them know your future goals. If they don't align with the job, then that probably is not the right job for you.
So the next question is, why should we hire you? So the underlying concern is, what do you have that someone else does not? So again, with this one, just making sure you pay attention to the job posting, making sure that you understand what they are looking for, and trying to pick the most relevant information or impactful skills that you have to answer that question.
So at the close of the interview, there are a few things you want to remember. You do want to be sure to ask meaningful questions, such as, what happened to the last person in this position? You could ask, how did that person or the people interviewing you come to work there and what keeps them there? If you're interviewing with your future supervisor, you could ask what their management style is. And there's many other meaningful questions you can come up with. So just think about what are the values that are important to you and center your questions around that. And also be sure to express enthusiasm. Just letting them simply know, hey, I'm still very interested in the position based on everything you've told me, can increase your chances of landing that job. Some don'ts is you do not want to ask if you got the job. If you get the job, they will let you know. And you also don't want to ask about pay. However, you want to do your research before your interview to know how much they probably pay in case it does come up. And lastly, you want to remember to thank the interviewer for their time, ask for their business card or cards if it's multiple people, and be sure to ask if it's okay for you to follow up, when will they be making a decision, those types of questions unless they let you know. So with those business cards that you have from the interviewers, you want to be sure to send thank you emails to each one of them. You don't have to have each one be completely different, but you still want to customize it a little bit to show that you were listening to each person. And make sure you send that within 24 hours. And also, if you do prefer to mail a thank you letter, that is still okay to do. Just be sure you know if they're not going to be making a decision for a while.
So to wrap things up, a couple things to remember. Always remember to research the company before your interview and prepare as much as possible. Make sure to practice those common interview questions, especially the ones that you have difficulty with. And then remember to review and follow up. So Review how you did at the interview. If there are certain questions that you didn't answer well, make sure you note those so that you can practice them more in the future. And always remember to follow up. Make sure you ask what the next steps are so you know what the appropriate action to take would be. Thank you for reviewing this presentation. If you have any further questions, please visit your local West Michigan Works.